Namaste, everyone. A very warm welcome to Yes Talks. Today's session is titled Storytelling. Engage and engross your audience. And the guest speaker with us today is Mr. V. Anand. Anand sir is a learning consultant who designs learning content. He enjoys interacting with children and likes to tell stories. Welcome, Anand sir. We are so glad to have you with us again on the Yes platform. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to indulge in my favorite pastime, which is telling stories. I do notice that because we don't have any children here in the audience, but in any case, so uh, I was hoping to make this a little more interactive. So I know questions usually come at the end, but I just wanted to understand, I can see Utpala ji, Biswajit Saab, Charu, and Dr. Ramesh Uncle is also there. So how many of you actually tell stories? Would anyone like to share with me how many of you tell stories and what do you do to make the stories engaging and engrossing?
I tell stories.
Yeah, how Utpala ma'am, please.
I tell stories to my grandchild, who is 9 plus. And we at Sri Aurobindo Sadhana Kendra here, we run prenatal education classes. So I tell stories to pregnant women also.
Excellent. That's nice.
Yeah.
That is so nice. Very nice. So what do you do to make it more engaging and engrossing?
First of all, I try to see that there should be an element of fun, kind of imagination I should be able to affect. And then in between, I try to interact with the child.
Excellent. Excellent. Excellent.
There
That's
is some
nice.
echo. Is it on from my side?
Yeah, I think, ma'am, you are logged in from
Yes.
two places, so I think
don't know
it's
how,
echoing.
but-
So I think,
So
I
till then
think,
you can.
sure,
see the
no
other.
problem.
I will check. I'll confirm.
Charuji, you are saying you'll write on chat. That's also fine. You can write on chat. So like Utpala ji was saying, making it interactive is really the key, and that's something that good storytellers really excel at. रमेश सर आपने भी हाथ उठाया था.
Yes, I often tell stories to school children, and the way I engage them is by asking them questions as the story goes along. Some of these questions ensure that they are with me
Yes.
and they feel involved. And some
Yes.
of these questions are designed to engineer a reflection.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that if there's a lesson hidden in the story, I don't have to tell them what the moral of the story is. They are able to derive it on their own.
Correct. Correct.
So therefore, there has to be some sort of a lesson plan even in storytelling. I know at what point to interrupt the story and ask what type of a question to engineer that type of a reflection.
Right. Great. So Charuji, while you write, so what I wanted to do today was let me first read out a story, and it's a really short story because I want to make a point, and I'll make the point after I read out the story. So this is again for those of you who attended my last session. This is from my childhood favorite book, which is Adventures of Dennis, which is a English translation of a Russian book. For those of you who stayed in Delhi, Arya Samaj Road, you would get these books for 50 paisa, 75 paisa, 1 rupee, 25 paisa. And this book now has come to tatters, but I still have it. So anyway, this is titled When I Was Little. When I was little, I was a poor eater. I'd take a mouthful of something and keep the food behind my cheek. Then mummy'd say, chew your food properly and swallow it. Mummy'd tell me stories while I ate. One day she told me the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Little Red Riding Hood. Chew your food. I chewed, Mummy continued. Her mother gave her a basket of food to take to her grandmother, so Little Red Riding Hood set out. Come on, chew. I chewed and Mummy continued. And then the wolf swallowed her grandmother. Come on, chew. Did you swallow it? And then the wolf swallowed Little Red Riding Hood. I chewed away obediently. Just then some hunters came to the cottage. Mummy said, come on, chew. Did you swallow it? And they killed the big bad wolf. They slit open the wolf's stomach, and there was Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. They were both alive. So this is a short story that I just read out. So Charuji has just responded. Let's take her response first, and then I'll come back to the story that I just read. As an English teacher, I believe it is more essential than ever for children to listen to stories. Absolutely. Before introducing a new literary topic, I always help my students visualize similar scenarios. Very nice. Absolutely. Okay. So I read out a story. Did you guys find it good, bad, odd? Arunima, you are smiling away. You want to say something?
Yeah, a little odd, of course, because you were just reading it out.
Yes. So I just wanted to stress on the fact that this whole thing of non-verbal communication in storytelling is very, very important. And there was a research long time back. I believe it still holds true. If any of you remember the research, because all of you are very experienced, do you know what component of communication in terms of percentage is just words and what percentage is not the words? Non-verbal communication is how much percentage? Does anybody want to venture a guess?
Around 70% or sometimes even more is non-verbal.
Correct. So the research actually showed 93% was non-verbal. So, and I always give this example. All of us have grown up and we've stayed with our parents, and there would have been days when you would reach home late and your parent would say, ये घर है कि धर्मशाला, ये कोई वक्त है घर आने का. And some days you would have repeated the offense so many times that your father or mother opened the door, didn't speak a word to you and went away. When did you feel worse?
They went away.
When they didn't speak to you. So non-verbal communication is far more effective than verbal communication. And in my experience with children, especially with children, and of course I've seen that even adults enjoy it, although they may not readily accept it. So storytelling with children, the non-verbal aspect is extremely important. And therefore now I'm going to read out this story again with the non-verbal elements included in it. And I purposely took a very small story. So here is the story again. Obviously, this is Dennis reflecting on how his mother would tell a story while he was eating. So the mother is telling the story. So when I was little, I was a poor eater. So stressing on the right words. I take a mouthful of something and keep the food behind my cheek. Then Mummy would say, chew your food properly and swallow it. So now I have spoken in this voice. However, what I usually do is, it's a mom voice, right? So I'll go high pitch. Chew your food properly and swallow it. So, as a storyteller, you need to have good vocal cords as well. So it's not easy for everybody to say, hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? So these are all tactics that I use. And, you know, if you look at good comedians these days, like I really like Jim Carrey, by the way, who's the English actor. He can really adjust his voice as well as make his face. So a rubber face is what really helps you become a good storyteller. So high pitch voice from others. Let me continue the story in her voice. Chew your food properly and swallow it. Mummy would tell me stories while I ate. One day, she told me the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Little Red Riding Hood. Chew your food! So, the combination of how she's telling the story and how she is scolding Dennis because he is not eating. I chewed, Mummy continued. Her mother gave her a basket of food to take to her grandmother. So Little Red Riding Hood set out. Sound effects of the foot going around. You can even add the forest element to it. Okay. Come on, chew! I chewed and Mummy continued. And then the wolf swallowed her grandmother. Come on, chew! Did you swallow it? And then the wolf swallowed Little Red Riding Hood. I chewed away obediently. Just then, some hunters came to the cottage. Come on, chew! Did you swallow it? And they killed the big bad wolf. Then they slit open the wolf's stomach, and there was Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. They were both alive. So that's the short story with all the expressions and the voice done in that. Of course, I didn't read out the last line, and this is the most brilliant aspect of how children think. So they were both alive. That's because the wolf didn't chew properly, I said. So that's the tagline that I left behind in the previous version of the story. So changing voices really helps bring up stuff. Making sound effects also really impact stuff. And if you're telling a story face to face, then your hand gestures and even using props is something that really works a lot. Works very, very well. Okay. So that was a really short story that I wanted to sort of demonstrate the fact that the non-verbal communication aspect of this whole thing works really, really well. And emphasizing on the right word, emphasizing it correctly is also a very important thing to do. And, I'm also associated with a small group called, Samvad. They do communication training for the medical profession. So they do communication training for doctors and stuff. And there we have this one exercise in which we give them one sentence. So the sentence could be something like, Anand asked me to do this. So Anand asked me to do this. 6 words. And you emphasize on different words. And the meaning of the sentence changes completely. So Anand asked me to do this, which means Anand must be a great person, very important person, and he asked me to do this. Anand asked me to do this, which means I am doing a favor to Anand. Somebody asked me to do this. Anand asked me to do this, which means that no, he didn't ask anybody else. He asked me, which means I am important. So you see how emphasizing on different words makes the meaning of the sentence change completely. And what we usually do, what I usually do is I will pick up, so if I'm teaching students, then I'll pick up a sentence which is relevant to them. If I'm teaching teachers, then it's something relevant to them. If I'm medical profession, something relevant to them. So that's basically how we decide on which word to stress. That's also something very important. So we will read the story 2-3 times. I will decide which words to emphasize on, which words, what kind of expression to make, what kind of facial expressions to make, and things like that. So that's basically something that we do. So that's something that I wanted to sort of demonstrate here with all of you. I notice we have 2 doctor friends who've joined, Dr. Sangeeta and Dr. Vaibhavi. I'm assuming you are all your medical professional doctors. So it's actually really good fun when we go and conduct these sessions. So I have a friend, I have a school friend who's an anesthesiologist. He works with Medanta, and mostly it's that circle that we go around talking to them and having a communications workshop with them. So that's something that I really wanted to. Okay, so I don't want to disappoint you with such a small story. I will now read out another Dennis story. It's again one of my favorites. When I don't know how many of you remember your childhood, but whenever a stranger comes in to meet your parents as a child, the child goes through some amount of discomfort. And this is Dennis's narration of what happens when an unknown adult comes to meet your parents. So the title of the story is There's Nothing You Can Do About It. And this is all narrated in Dennis is narrating this, but there's this gentleman who's coming. So I will obviously use a lot of body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice because this is very engaging that way. So there's nothing you can do about it. Grown-ups often ask children stupid questions. You would think they were all in on it, as if they had all learned the same questions to ask. I am so used to this by now that I can tell you what will happen if I am introduced to a grown-up. It'll go like this. Ding dong! The bell will ring, mummy will open the door, there'll be a lot of mumble jumble, and then some grown-up I have never seen before will walk in. He'll rub his hands. He'll rub his ears. He'll adjust his glasses. When he finally puts them back on, he will see me. And even though he knows all about me and what my name is, he will grip me by my shoulder, shake me and say, "Well, Dennis, what's your name?" If I were rude, I would say, "Why are you asking me such a stupid question? If you know the answer anyway, you just said my name." But I am polite. That's why I'll pretend I didn't notice, smile sourly, look away and say, "Dennis." Then he pops the next question. "And how old are you?" As if he can't tell I'm not 30 or 40 years old. He can see how big I am and should know I'm 7, maybe 8 at most. So why ask? But he has his own grown-up ideas. So he'll go on annoying me. How old are you? How old are you? And I'll say 7.5. His eyes will get all big and he'll throw up his hands in the air as if I just told him that I was 161 yesterday. He'll moan like all his teeth were aching and cry, "Oh my, 7.5! Oh my!" But he'll finally stop moaning so that I won't burst out crying with feeling so sorry for him. And so I'll all see it's a big joke. Then he'll poke 2 fingers into my stomach real hard and say in a man-to-man voice, "Be ready for the army soon, won't you?" So usually at this point in time, I will stop and ask, why is he referring to the army? Now, Russia had conscription at that point in time. So it's an interesting way of bringing the whole cultural aspect of different countries into this whole being. "Be ready for the army soon, won't you?" Then he'll start again from the beginning. He'll shake his head and say to mommy and daddy, just imagine why he's already 7.5. It's unbelievable. Then he'll turn to me and add, "Why, I remember you were still in diapers." And he'll hold his hand about 20 centimeters apart and say, how big I was then. That's when I would like to say that I know for certain that I was 51 centimeters when I was born. Mummy has a piece of paper that says so. It's called a birth certificate. But I don't get mad at him. They are all like that. Next, he's supposed to look like he's thinking. And he does. You bet your life he does. He'll drop his head on his chest like he's fallen asleep. That's when I try to wiggle out of his grip. Nothing doing. He was looking for more questions, as if they were lying around in his pocket. When he finally does, he'll give you a big smile and say, "Oh yes, what would you want to be when you grow up? Tell me, what would you like to be when you grow up?" I want to be a spelunker. But I know this will bore him silly. He won't understand me. And it's not what he's expecting. So not to get him all confused, I will say, I want to be an ice cream man. Then I can eat ice cream all day. The man will look really happy. Everything's coming along fine. He'll slap me on the back real hard and say in a fatherly tone, "That's right. That's fine. Good for you." Poor me. I think the game's finally over and I try backing away from him slowly because I'm in a hurry. I have homework to do and a lot of other things. But he'll notice me trying to break loose and will clutch me harder. That's called using brute force. When I finally get tired of struggling, he'll ask me the main question. "Now you tell me this, my little friend." He'll say, and something sneaky will creep into his voice. "Tell me, who do you love best, mommy or daddy?" That's not tactful at all, especially since mommy and daddy are both in the room. I'll have to wriggle out of this. So I say, Mikhail Tal. So Mikhail Tal is a famous chess player. He'll begin to laugh. He really enjoys stupid answers like that and he'll repeat it 100 times. Mikhail Tal, the famous chess player. Mikhail Tal. How is that for an answer? What do you say to that, you lucky parents? And he'll go on whooping for a half an hour more. And mommy and daddy will laugh too. And I'll be ashamed of them and of myself. And I'll promise myself later on, when the nightmare's finally over, I'll sneak mommy a kiss when daddy is looking, when mommy isn't looking. Because I love both of them. That's the honest truth. It's as simple as that. But for some reasons, grown-ups don't like that kind of an answer. I tried to answer honestly a couple of times and always saw how disappointed they were. It was as if they were trying to say to themselves, what a strange reply. So he likes them both equally well. What a strange boy he is. That's why I lie and say I like the famous chess player Mikhail Tal. It gives them a laugh. Meanwhile, I can try to break free of my new friend's steel claws again. No go. He's ever stronger than an ox. Besides, he has another little question up his sleeve. But I can tell by his voice that we are now coming to an end of the show. It'll be the best question of all, sort of like the question for dessert. He'll suddenly look real scared and say, "Why didn't you wash your face this morning?" I washed my face, like I always do. But I know what's coming. What I don't know is why they never get tired of such a tattered old game. Anyway, to bring things to a quicker end, I'll clutch my face and say, where's the dirt? Bullseye, quick as a flash, he'll hand me that old garbage. What about your eyes? Why are your eyes still black? You forgot to wash them. You go do that right away. And finally, he will let me go. Which means I am free to get back to all the things I have to do. These new acquaintances are sure hard on me, but what can I do? It's a stage all children have to go through. There's nothing you can do about it. So this was one of my favorite stories. And although my parents wouldn't make me go through so much, but it sort of resonated with me. And I have seen that when I read out this story to children, they really enjoy it. Because this is something that I'm sure at some point in time or other, beta nursery rhyme sunao, beta kya banoge. And especially in this day and age, if you ask a slightly grown-up child, what do you want to become when you grow up? They're like, we don't know, which is the truth. So that's something that, we really like to do. So that was another one of my stories. So if anyone has any questions, comments, we are open for discussion. We have a little more time. If everybody is game, we can have a small activity as well. We can all indulge in some storytelling if you are game. Mr. Chidananda ji, please, you're raising your hand.
I know I joined a little bit late. I know I really amazed the way you narrated the whole conversation is. In this storytelling, I guess it will come in the multiple, avenues. One of them is a conversation too, the way you did, articulate it to us. what about we are doing a presentation? Are you covering in your talk today something elements about apart from the conversation too, or what are the case study as some examples you are doing it? Take that presentation or a talks as also as a you know element so that we'll get some perspective that how do we attract audience to such
Ah,
things.
so Chidaranjan ji, today's scope doesn't involve that, but I think I will coordinate with Arunima and Bijlani sir. That certainly is something that I will prep and we can come back to that, because storytelling in the corporate world is a very different ball game altogether. And instead of presenting a concept, presenting facts and figures, if you present it as a story, people remember it much better. However, the challenge, and because I have done a lot of train the trainer sessions, the challenge really is that the person telling the story needs to be able to convince the audience that it is their story. Because if Bijlani sir gives us an anecdote about, let's say, something that happened in his medical profession, I can't do it. I haven't studied medicine at all. And even if I am able to copy him to the last T, it will not be convincing at all. So one of the challenges and one of the interesting points about being a good corporate storyteller is that you have to create your own stories, which have to be from either your life or at least maybe one step away. Maybe, your child went through it, your father went through it, your best friend went through it. At least if it didn't happen to you, at least you witnessed it. Because otherwise it becomes very, very artificial. And these days people can actually see through that. So absolutely, you are very right. So I wasn't planning to do that today because it will anyway take a completely different turn. Today's session was sort of a continuation of the previous. I think I took the session, I don't know, Arunima, a year back or maybe even more, right?
More,
Yeah.
at least 2
Yeah,
years, yeah.
2 years back. Yeah, that's what. So that's the thing. But the thing is that what we covered, sir, before you joined was that basically I read out one story in a very dull fashion, in sort of in the way Doordarshan news readers used to read the news, and then I read it out in a slightly less dramatic version than Arnab Goswami. So uh, that's the basic thing. So tone of voice, pace of your how you speak, silences, and your facial expressions really work a lot, especially on a Zoom call. This is all you can see. Otherwise, standing up and delivering is fantastic. You have a lot of fun that you can really have telling the story. Utpala ji, you are raising your hand, please.
Anji, it was wonderful. I am under the impression that particularly like people like us, I'm also, by the way, anesthetist, but not a trained storyteller. Um, uh, what I am under the impression that it's better to read out the story and then, without referring to the book, tell the story. That might be that might it might be more effective. I don't know, but the way you were reading, but at the same time you were actually enacting. So I mean, I did not see. I mean, it was very good. So what do you suggest? Is that means we have to read it, we have to prepare ourselves, and then we can read out and try to tell the story the way.
So Utpalaji, this again, is something that there is no fixed answer for this, and that's something that I would seriously stress on, because your style is your style, and trying to use somebody else's style doesn't necessarily work.
Yes.
And I've tried this. I've tried a different experiments. Somehow the book in my hand gives an anchoring effect. And I have seen this. I have seen a couple of these people. Like, for example, I have seen Gulzar Saab read out from a book and sometimes not read out from a book. I have seen Javed Akhtar do the same thing. I have seen Even this fellow, I've forgotten his name. Anyway, who came in Mirzapur. He's an author, but he also sometimes acts. So the thing here is what actually this helps do is that it gives the fact that I'm reading from somewhere, and so this whole thing gives a certain authority to the thing that I'm doing. So like if you attended a pravachan, for example, there are certain people, certain gurus or certain people who will have the Gita in front of them and they'll turn page by page and they'll read it out. Same impact. And there are some who have by-hearted the Gita completely and they narrate it. So I have tried both. Both have their pros and cons. So whatever you are comfortable with, you can sort of do it like that. So I don't think there is a formula for this really. And also sometimes what I do is, because this is a book, I sometimes will show them the photo because there are illustrations on this. So I'll show them. So this is when the Little Red Riding Hood story was being said while he was eating. So that also has a great impact. So there is no single formula for this really. And the book is there. And by the way, every time you hear me read out the story, it will not be the same because I change words, I change the expressions. So the book is just a guiding thing for me. So it just helps me not miss any critical element of the story. That's where I use the book really. And especially with the dentist thing, somehow I don't want to miss anything. So but if it were the Ramayana or the Mahabharata or something, which I would ad-lib very easily. But this dentist thing, I like to read it from the book. So I think it's very personal, and I would suggest that you keep it that way. I mean, if you look at all the performers, all the actors, they all have their own way of sort of doing this. And if you watch any of the, like for example, if you watch the black and white Devdas and then the old Devdas and the current Devdas, you will find that there are some similarities and many differences, and they're all effective in their own way, man. So my learning in my 50 odd years on this planet is that be yourself, and I'm sure you are also being yourself. So whatever works, I think that's most important.
And secondly, irrespective of the age, suppose we want to talk about what should be the objective of storytelling other than the fun. So does it depend upon the age, or because by and large, once the child is grown up, like beyond 5, 6, 7, our temptation is like choosing something where we can it has some moral. But I think I put more weightage on fun kind of, or where the child is more engaged, something like that. So what is your take?
I am with you, ma'am, because all this morals and learning and all is something that they go through in school all the time. I remember once my child had come back from school. She was still in primary. She came, she flung her bag and she jumped up and down on the sofa. So I asked her why. I mean, my wife, I asked her what's happening. She's saying, I don't like rules. So there was too many rules at school. So she didn't want rules. So what they get at school, I think we shouldn't repeat that. So therefore, all this moralizing and all is not required. However, like Bijlani sir said, asking them reflective questions and them going on their ideas and sharing stuff and all is a good one. Like in my last storytelling thing, I had basically given the example of Ramayana. When I narrate Ramayana to small children, I talk about the fact that Dashrath had 3 wives, which means that Rama, Lakshmana, Shatrugana and Bharata would have 3 mothers. So I would ask children, do you think it's a good idea to have 3 mothers? And that would evoke all kinds of responses. Like I remember one response was, yes, because I have one mother who will cook for me, one mother who can play with me. Something like that. And then somebody said, no, we have 3 mothers, all 3 will scold us. Scolding will also become threefold. So for me, I think the objective of storytelling, fun and all is fine, is for the person who's listening to the story to be able to think and reflect and bring out new perspectives. So for me, that's why storytelling is two-way. When I tell the same story to different people, I also learn new things. So my objective is always that. That's what I am looking out for. In fact, if I tell the same story to the same person, also I sometimes learn different things. I mean, all this started because I used to narrate stories to my children, and during the COVID times, my smaller one said, "Appa, why don't you do this storytelling online?" So during the COVID time, I used to do a lot of storytelling. Every week we would get together and some children would attend and we would have a lot of fun. So that's basically. So the objective of storytelling for me is to open up a person's mind to different possibilities. Basically, that's something that.
Yes.
Biswajit Saab, thank you so much. I enjoyed. I remember purchasing some very interesting. Yes. Have you ever used some form of music along with storytelling? Yeah. So for the circumstances I am doing storytelling, music opportunity hasn't come up. But when I did the Ramayana, I used a lot of music. So I used the bhajans and the background music, the background score, and all that stuff. I certainly used. And yes, again, it's a very, very impactful thing. Again, part of non-verbal communication, part of the environment. And I've done a little bit of theater, hobby-wise. And again, the art director, the set director, when they set up the set and all, that's also beautiful what they do. That also enhances the whole thing. So at least online, when I do, I will sometimes dress up. Like Dennis had an episode of a clown. So I did a little bit of makeup, put on a false nose, and narrated the full story. So that also is quite great.
So do you conduct workshops on storytelling art?
I mean, I do. It's on a work. It's on a break right now, but I do. If you need anything conducted, you can let me know. We can certainly collaborate. Ma'am, which part of the world are you in?
I'm in Gujarat.
Excellent. Which city?
I'm at Anand, Milk Fame Anand. Yes.
Yeah. So very nice. Good. So I am based in Noida, but we can certainly do online, or if ever one needs to come along, then that's. Sir, Chidananda sir.
Particularly in the storytelling, are we focusing this conversation primarily on the conversation or story writing too?
So no, I am not getting into story writing as of now. I'm just talking of how to tell a story. But again, coming back to your question that you asked earlier, that will involve creating your own story. So you may not write a story, but you will be able to convert the data that you have or the concept that you want to teach into a small anecdote or a story. That's primarily the thing. So for example, as a trainer, the thing that we always tell our students is, look, everybody must participate. If you don't participate, the training will not be effective, right? Fantastic. But this looks like a sermon. So usually I tell a story. I say there was a king, and this story you guys have heard. There was a king who once said that we will all have a community feast. So we will get the rice, the palace will supply the rice. All of you have to bring 1 glass of milk. हम सब कल खीर खाएंगे. So all the people in the city, they came, they poured their glass, and the kheer was made. And when they ate the kheer, everybody spat it out. It was disgustingly distasteful. Why? Because there were 100,000 people, and everybody thought, why should I give milk if I add a little bit of water to 99,900 glasses of milk? 1 glass of water will not make a difference. Everybody thought like that, and everybody put water, so it was not kheer, it was kanji. So,
Right.
you are 20 people in this classroom. If you don't give milk, I will not be able to give you kheer. So this is how we build relevance of a concept into a story.
Right.
And the other thing we do also is, like, I mean, I'm heavily into Bollywood and stuff. So I'll think of a concept and I'll think of a movie that I've seen. I'll take out a scene and show it to them. Like, for example, I mean, if you remember this whole Rajesh Khanna movie, Bawarchi,
Yes.
a copy was made by Govinda. And so Govinda is a knocker in a house, and Kader Khan, the father, comes to meet him, and they say, "Chal, bahar chalte hain." And they both are dressed, one as a chowkidar and one as a knocker, and they try to enter a 5-star hotel. And the Darban says, "Kahan ja raha hai?" So, first impressions make a difference. So, when I talk of grooming, I tell them, like, if you don't dress up well, you may not get the respect. So, again, I have used an anecdote. So, story. So, you have a concept, you have a fact. How to convert that to story is something that Chidanand sir was referring to. Perhaps we can have a session on that. I can certainly work on that. Maybe in a couple of months, we can have a session on that as well, because that's important. Today, of course, I did this session I think a month back we were speaking, and Ramesh sir said, "एक तुम्हारा time आ गया, एक बारी और कुछ कर दो." तो for me, telling story to children is like something that I really enjoy doing. So that's something that I did.
So any other books on adventures, like going to the forest and picnic, and then you face a difficult situation that way? I mean, I have not read these adventures of Davis, but do you suggest any other books rather?
No, not the books don't. The book doesn't come to my mind really, but this one book is a very interesting book, Utpala ji.
Yeah, I'll note down.
Yeah, so this one is if an adult reads it, they will get really philosophical stuff out of it. But if a child reads it, he'll get some other stuff out of it. So this is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. So each page is like just one line and stuff.
Okay.
It's a beautiful book. So, for example, this page that I've opened has a fantastic sentence in it. Doing nothing with friends is never doing nothing, is it?
True.
Now, this I can discuss with a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old also. And that's the beauty of stories. Here again, sometimes I worry you'll all realize I'm ordinary, said the boy. Love doesn't need you to be extraordinary, said the mole. So again, each page, each line of this book, you can have a sermon on it actually. So I mean I'll look up for. So Utpala ji, I will try and get my list of favorite books. I will pass it on to you through Arunima.
Okay.
Certainly.
That will be very helpful.
Yeah, certainly. And Utpala ji, I am assuming you are Gujarati.
Yes, I am Gujarati.
So actually, that's the other thing that I have noticed, that a lot of local stories are fantastic. Like, for example, this Dennis book is a translation from Russian. It's hardcore Russian. I mean, I wish I knew Russian because I could then read the original. And in fact, if you look in Amazon, you will find the Hindi translation of this. It comes in 3 volumes, and it has all interesting stories. So you can actually read out the story in Hindi, and the English book has less number of stories. So I mean, I was doing my research and I suddenly discovered that everything hasn't been translated into your this thing. Into English, but all Russian stories have been translated into Hindi. And ma'am, I don't know if you've read any of these Russian folk tales. The Russian folk tales always have this theme of there is a poor boy who has to do something, so he goes into the forest or he goes somewhere. There he meets a horse. The horse has a special power. Then he meets a mosquito. The mosquito has another.
No, I have not read. No.
All stories are in the same line. So then he'll meet one wolf. He'll meet 3-4 things which have special powers. Then he'll reach like the kingdom where the king will have put a challenge, and each part of the challenge is fulfilled by one. The horse will fulfill one challenge. The mosquito will fulfill another challenge. and then he is able to marry the princess.
Mm.
So it's again a very interesting line that you sort of used to go through. I'm not sure if the kids of this day and age will appreciate that, but this Dennis they appreciate because it's daily life stories really.
Right.
So again the local folk tales are fantastic. Many of them have a lot of interesting aspects that you can really work on and stuff. And ma'am, I am very. I mean, obviously it was an audience, but pregnant ladies is a very interesting subsection of an audience
Yes.
because they are expecting. So obviously there's a child inside of them, and narrating a story to them is almost like two for the price of one. You're
Exactly.
narrating the story. So this reminds me of what Abhimanyu had gone through in Mahabharata.
Yes, yes.
So fantastic.
There are many advantages. Yeah. One is stress relief because story everybody likes it, so they start moving in that world. So it
Yes,
is
yes,
very
yes.
important that stress should be reduced and they should be happy. And then there has to be some kind of in that, of course, on some of the stories there are values are attached and
Yeah.
some
Correct.
values which we want to see in the in the unborn child. Some kind of.
Yeah, that's true. So that objective obviously is very different. But again, I think for the base thing is if a story can set you thinking, I think then you have achieved the.
So then at that time we do have questions at the end of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. That goes without saying. I mean, having questions is a good idea, but having a discussion with an open mind is really very, very interesting. So that's where I draw the line. I mean, that's the difference between a sermon and a story. A sermon is basically one person saying everything and do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, and that may be a story. But the true power of storytelling for me is I tell a story and then engage people and stuff like that.
One
So
thing which I noticed was like, uh, uh, usually we would like to have the happy end, but my grandchild sometimes is not comfortable. Then he said, "Why happy end? That the person should be killed. I mean, that person is left at the end of," and I am speechless. Why every time it is happy end?
I think that's something that as generations are changing, I think that's something that's coming up very clearly now. Is that children these days are not necessarily they're not wanting a fantasy world. They're not wanting a perfect world. I think they are exposed to so much happening around them that they are okay with the realistic ending also.
And death does not scare them. The
Yes, and I
element
think
of death in the story does not scare them.
I think that's a good sign. I mean, because I think stories no longer start with once upon a time and end with and they lived happily ever after. In fact, some of these stories, maybe for a slightly older kids of 8, 9 and all, you can actually get, if you search the internet for parodies of stories, you will find these. So, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a complete hilarious twist to it. That how Snow White bullies the dwarfs, or something else, or Cinderella, she gets married to the prince but realizes that the prince is a useless fellow. So those kind of things are also being written. So it's very interesting, this whole thing. In fact, one of my colleagues from a earlier organization had written a book. I think it was called The Eighth Dwarf. It was a sort of a extension of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and he had introduced an eighth dwarf in it. Those are also very interesting perspectives. So what I try and do is that I basically try and do that. I try and tell a story, ask a question, and see where the children take themselves. And in fact, that can be done with adults as well. Because so as a trainer, you throw open an open question and see how different people think, and then you are just a facilitator of different thoughts that are coming up, and make sure that the ideas are exchanged and different people start seeing how different people are thinking. So that's something that is really fantastic that happens when ideas are exchanged. So I think exchange of ideas in an open and free atmosphere is very important, especially in this day and age where a lot of extremism is coming into people's thoughts and all. So I think that's extremely important. And at least for me, the heartening thing is that I'm looking at like my elder one is now 20, and she engages quite vociferously and neutrally on most subjects. My younger one is 14, 15. She's also quite open and open to ideas, and that I think that's the most important thing in this whole scheme of things.
Very nice. Thank you.
So I think we are well within time, Arunima.
Yes, of course, sir. Thank you so much. Such enjoyable session we had with you and very interesting interaction and discussion with the participants as well.
Yes, same here, same here.
Thank you. Dr. Bijlani, sir, would you like to share something? We already had some interaction with the participants, so I'm checking in with you.
Like the previous session, this one also indeed was a memorable experience. And one of the things that came up was whether the stories should be just for fun or there should be a moral lesson that should emerge from the story. Of course, I mean, there can be a moral lesson hidden somewhere. And as I said, I mean, the best is that the children deduce it on their own through a reflection rather than, you follow that old fashioned method, tell the whole story and then ask the children, what did you learn from the story? Yeah? That actually is not something which works the best. And even if the story has no lesson hidden in it, it's just for fun. Why not? At least I think even that teaches one thing, that we don't have to look at every activity in terms of its utility. Utilitarianism, the mother has pointed out, is one of the greatest evils of the modern age. We look for some use or utility in everything. Having fun in itself is good enough. Why not? Another thing that struck me when you said that the same story can mean one thing to the child and another thing to an adult. And there are so many stories like that. In fact, of course, any children's story is enjoyed generally by adults too. We all have a little bit of the child in us. But there are some classics like Alice in Wonderland,
Yes,
The Little Prince, or Jonathan Livingston Seagull. No, man, these are classics which can be seen in so many ways, and there's so much philosophy hidden, and the children also enjoy these stories.
yeah,
There are stories like that, and stories are something and an excellent medium for learning. I mean, even as adults, a lot that we have learned has come from the Ramayana and Mahabharata, not so much from the Vedas and the Upanishads. In fact, as a society, also, a lot of our behavior has been modeled by these epics rather than by pure and abstract philosophy. So, stories do have a great role to play in life, the life of children as well as adults.
True.
Another thing that, as you said, everybody has to follow his own style. And everybody also is not gifted with the type of versatile voice that you have.
Yes,
So that doesn't mean that the rest of us can't tell a story. As you know, Utpala ji was saying that she has narrated stories to her grandchildren. Now, that is a unique situation because what she is to the grandchildren, nobody else can be.
correct.
And the role that she is playing, no matter how she tells it, I'm sure the children love it. So that also is important. And another thing that sort of thought I'll share with you is how very often I tell a story to children. I'm not as gifted or anything, nowhere near you. But all the same, I do try to sort of bring in that engagement with the children. Sometimes I read a book like you and show them the pictures. But sometimes I work a little harder on the story. What I do is make a PPT out of the pictures in the book and very little text.
Yes,
So when the facilities are available, it's a properly planned session with a large number of children. Then I narrate the story. Along with that, the pictures keep changing in the PPT. So that serves as an aid to my memory and also serves as a visual aid, an interesting visual aid for the children. Because again, we know that and there are different types of children. Some are more of auditory learners and some more of visual
Yes.
learners.
Yes.
So you're taking care of both, make the story more interesting, and also the person who's narrating, it serves as a aid to his memory as the pictures change. So these are some of the things that occurred to me as you were talking. But certainly, I mean, storytelling is great. And although, I mean, you might be a born storyteller, but as they say, even when there are areas in which we have born teachers and born storytellers and so on, those who are not born can at least get better than they are by learning from people like you. So a
Absolutely.
session like yours is very useful for parents, grandparents, and teachers.
Thank you.
So I'm sure, although there were very few who joined this session, it will be seen, I hope, by many more adults so that they get better at telling a story.
Sure,
And
Can
sure.
sir, can I just give a quick share of my experience? There was a conference on the Vedic implications in the current of a time, the Auro University Surat. So there was a guest person, speaker Bharat Das from I think MP, and so it was a kind of serious. All the topics were very serious, Vedic, all around Ved.
Hmm.
And then he started the session that I'll tell you a story. Now even with that audience, everybody was like, "Oh, story." And then the kind of story the way he narrated the story, the way he told the story, the same story I was able to tell to my grandchild. You
Absolutely.
can imagine these what can be, I mean, such an open was the kind of story line. It was a wonderful story, to starting of a very serious topic, uh, which touched everybody's heart. And then when I was asking him to give me some more such good stories, and then he said, "I can give you stories, but you have to tell. You just don't put the audio on." Uh, that's of course everybody knows about it, but such stories are there. It's for
Yes, yes.
all ages.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Bijlani sir has said a very interesting one. Alice in Wonderland is a very good book. I don't know, ma'am, if you've read it, but I will.
Long, yes.
I always remember a line out of it which says, one character says, "Where is your porpoise?" I said, "What porpoise?" She's saying you cannot go somewhere without a porpoise. So it's a word play. It means you have to have a purpose in life, and that was said as porpoise. So that was something that I remember all the time. Whenever I am stuck, I'm like, "Oh, where is my porpoise?" And usually I ask myself that question. Sometimes I find my porpoise, sometimes I don't. So Alice in Wonderland is a very good one, and uh, uh, Devdutt Patnaik tells stories very well. Although if you are a very very pure Hindu follower, you may find that some of the things may not follow the exact what the scriptures had said, but he tells stories quite well, and children certainly love to associate with that. These are two books that come to my mind immediately. But like I promised, I will see what I
Please,
can gather, and I will
it will be, it
send
will
it
help us.
through Arunima, certainly.
Thank you.
Anand, you already given us the topic for the next session, and I hope it will be soon again
Yeah, yeah,
on
I'll work on it and let you know,
how to
certainly.
create a story around a concept.
Yeah, certainly. So we can do it I mean, from a corporate presentation kind of a thing, not really for children, but otherwise, yeah, certainly we'll do that. That's something that uh, I mean, I do it now. I have to convert it to a presentation.
And some of those things were so useful and can have such general application. Like,
Yes,
you always encourage the audience to participate. And very often the participation is very scarce. They are reluctant to participate. In fact, the
yes,
older the audience, the more reluctant they are to participate.
correct,
If it is the primary school children, there's no problem.
correct.
But if it is secondary school children, they're all silent.
Right.
So we need
Because giving the kheer example, that's because as children grow up, they start hating milk, and the really old people are lactose intolerant. So
So that Kheer example was excellent to encourage participation in any audience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Participants, you can share your email IDs if you wish to be added to the Yes Spirituality mailing list. And of course, before we close, let me inform that the recording of today's session will be published on our YouTube channel, Yes Spirituality. And you can explore the channel for more such content on yoga, education, spirituality, and related subjects like psychology and wellness. Anand sir, thank you so much once again. And
Thank you.
we thank you as well for being with us today. We'll close today's session now with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.